This palate cleanser talk, what is that? I don't want that. We want to be the centerpiece, man. We want to do something big. And it feels like Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne deserve that at this point.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of E-Junkies, and today we are going to be zooming in on the smallest Avenger, Ant-Man. That's right, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is already out in cinemas, and I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to catch it. It follows the adventures of Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne. This is like way past Endgame. And of course now Scott's daughter Cassie is grown up, and she, along with Scott, Hope and Hope's parents, Janet and Hank, they all get sucked into the quantum realm, and in order for them to escape, they have to face off with Kang. Now, we all know Kang is going to be the big bad of the multiverse saga, like basically the next Thanos, yeah. So Quantumania is going to be the introduction to Kang, and it's going to be exciting. Everyone is kind of looking forward to this. And over at AsiaOne, we got very lucky and we managed to interview the director Peyton Reed about the film. So we asked Peyton about the casting of Jonathan Majors. You know, as you all know, he is, well, I don't want to say rising star because a lot of critics have noticed him already, like in previous projects before Marvel. But he is obviously one of the acclaimed actors, and we're very excited to have him join the MCU. We spoke to Peyton also about, you know, he mentioned Ant-Man being a palate cleanser in the series of films, especially after the Avengers movie, so we got his take on that and what he felt about that. We also asked him, you know, whether there's any truth to, you know, the fact that Quantumania is influenced by Star Wars. You've seen a lot of that comparison out there. We got the answer here. And of course, whether, you know, Peyton Reed will ever go back to directing rom-coms. Peyton is known for, or rather his notable works before included, you know, the cult classic. There was the cheerleading comedy, Bring It On. I think everyone should have heard of that, as well as Down with Love. It's the romantic comedy starring Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger. So of course he kind of told us a little bit about that and whether he would want to go back to doing rom-coms, you know, because cinema really needs rom-coms right now. But anyway, without further ado, let's roll the clip.
Hi, my name is Brian from AsiaOne Singapore, and nice to meet you, Peyton.
Nice to meet you, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. First up, congratulations on the film. It's huge, it's flashy, it's got a lot going for it. So you got the big Avengers film that you said you wanted. And I actually checked, the last two Ant-Man films did come out after an Avengers film. Because you said you didn't want Quantumania to be a palate cleanser. So how did it feel when you realized that some people had that impression or had that thought?
Well, you know, we intentionally, with the first Ant-Man, it was by design a much smaller movie, no pun intended, but like the idea that Scott Lang was an ex-con, you know, he was nowhere near being an Avenger, and we really liked that. That movie was essentially a heist movie with a kind of science fiction vibe with the Pym particles, and it was Scott Lang getting pulled into this much larger world of superheroes and supervillains. But as Scott has progressed throughout the MCU, you know, he's become an actual Avenger and was crucial in defeating Thanos in Endgame, and now we find him and the Wasp at the center of this Quantumania adventure. So it's been really gratifying, and the idea of, like, it became a joke really, that it was like, oh, giant Avengers movie, oh, here's a fun little Ant-Man movie. We did that twice. And I said to Kevin Feige, it's like, this palate cleanser talk, what is that? I don't want that. We want to be the centerpiece, man. We want to do something big. And it feels like Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne deserve that at this point. They've paid their MCU dues, and so we talked about this movie. We knew we wanted to build on the first two and take the audience into the quantum realm. But we also knew we wanted to put Ant-Man and Wasp up against a really formidable villain, like one of the all-time great Marvel Comics villains, Kang the Conqueror.
So now that Scott has faced Kang and survived, do you think he'll write a book about it?
That's an interesting question. So yeah, we started our movie and Scott Lang has written a book about the battle with Thanos, you know, and he's been the official chronicler of that battle. The Avengers elected him to write the book and became a global bestseller. I don't know, it's interesting. Does Scott Lang have another book in him? I'm not sure. Is the first book any good? Did people just read it to find out what's his writing style like? I don't know. That's something to certainly to be explored. I think his book is fantastic, but it remains to be seen if he has another book in him.
Okay, hopefully we'll see it in the next Ant-Man or something. Okay, the MCU has brought on a lot of talented actors to play villains. Did you only have Jonathan in mind for the role of Kang, or, you know, were there other contenders at some point in time?
Early on, there were other contenders. There were people talked about. I had seen Jonathan in, I think, pretty much everything he had done up to that point. I first saw him in this movie, Hostiles, with Christian Bale, and in a very small role, he just blew me away. and The Five Bloods, the Spike Lee movie, and Last Black Man in San Francisco. He has this incredible body of work, but the thing you remember is that he has this incredible range and this presence. So I talked to Marvel and Kevin and really pushed hard for Jonathan because he felt like the guy. I needed someone who was physically imposing for Kang and someone who was who had some real depth and some real gravitas. He was the only guy for me. I was just blown away by Jonathan, and I was thrilled that he said yes. And Jonathan stepped into this role and, you know, with myself and Jeff Loveness, the writer, created this character of Kang who really makes good on the promise of Kang that we know from the comic books. And we like the idea of bringing a very different energy into the Ant-Man universe. Someone who was not gonna have any use for Scott Lang's joking around and was a really, really powerful foe.
You said you love Kang in previous interviews and you were excited about bringing him to the MCU. So if you could pick the next big bad for the MCU and you could cast the actor or actress for it, which character would you pick and who would you cast?
Well, listen, they've had a lot of great villains in the MCU. I'm sure there's some upcoming villains, I have no idea. But, you know, when I look at the comic books, it's like, I still want to see a great MCU version of Doctor Doom. I want to see Galactus. There's so many other villains that I want to see. And of course, as we know, Kang himself has lots of variants. So I think there's still a lot of really crazy, powerful villains left to deal with in the MCU. In terms of casting, that's always a very specific situation, right? I don't know who I would cast, but they're the villains that I want to see. I don't know why I gravitate toward Doctor Doom and Galactus and all those, you know, those villains from the Fantastic Four era. That I want to see them.
Okay, so in your career, people might recognize you from, you know, directing the Marvel films, but you've also done films like Bring It On, which is a cult classic. You've done Down with Love, which I love, and when I was a teenager, I watched it every day after school.
Oh wow, awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, such a lovely show. So what is it that still keeps you in the MCU after 8 years or so? And, you know, have you considered kind of going back to your roots and doing comedy or rom-com? I mean, cinema could use a good rom-com right about now too.
Well, you're right about that. I love a good rom-com, as you know. You know, listen, in my career, I've wanted to try and do lots of different things. I was thrilled to be able to work at Marvel and to be able to do 3 Ant-Man movies, to do a trilogy of movies. That had been a goal of mine. You know, I grew up on the Star Wars trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy. It means something to me. And it made sense for this to sort of progress these characters and really take Scott Lang from being this, you know, little-known character to being this, you know, centerpiece in the MCU. That was fulfilling. I have a lot more movies ahead of me and a lot of different things I want to do. I would love to do a musical. There's a lot of different things I want to do. So we'll see what the future holds.
Okay, I think this is probably my last question, so I'm going to try and get this in. So, Quantumania has been said to be like, you know, the MCU's version of Star Wars. And I know you've directed 2 episodes on The Mandalorian. Is there any truth to that? Like, was Quantumania really influenced by Star Wars?
I don't think Quantumania was really influenced by Star Wars, other than I love the way Star Wars made me feel as a kid, the way Back to the Future made me feel. But the approach to the quantum realm was really, I wanted to take a bunch of things that thrilled me and influenced me as a kid and as an adult. And it's not just movies, it's science fiction literature and things like Heavy Metal Magazine and sword and sorcery movies and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, all of these things, you know, because we had to create a really wide and varied version of the quantum realm with lots of different environments and characters and concepts. So I think that's probably one of many. If anything, it was like, how do we make the quantum realm different than the Star Wars universe? That was a thing that we really felt like. I wanted to make it different than that. I wanted to make it different than, you know, other environments we've experienced within the MCU. Like, it can't look like Asgard. It can't be, you know, outer space from the Guardians movies. It's got to be its own unique thing.
So that's all the time I have. Thank you so much, Peyton. Congratulations again, and I cannot wait to see what you come up with next.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
So that was definitely an interesting opportunity to kind of like dive behind the scenes, to kind of see what were the thought processes, or, you know, what were the influences behind certain decisions. I mean, it's not often that you get a peek behind the camera. I think most of the times when you watch our interviews, it's always with the cast, but I think this was a good kind of sneak behind the scenes, and I really enjoyed talking to Peyton about it. Very media trained, definitely. There were a lot of He tied it back a lot to certain talking points, but I think all in all, he did give pretty good quotes, and honestly, I just feel fortunate to be able to talk to him and to get that opportunity. As for the film itself, personally, I think it could have done a little bit more with Kang, to be really honest, because he's going to be the next big bad, and I wanted to feel a little bit more from him, especially in terms of him being malicious or evil or like ruthless. I think that could have come through a little bit better, but I absolutely loved what Jonathan Majors brought to this role, and you're going to see different iterations of him. I am extremely excited, and I cannot wait to see what the MCU brings and what Jonathan Majors brings to Kang. And that's it for today's episode of E-Junkies, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!